we're having this interview at a time that follows within a few months of the passing of two people that were important to you. One was, let's start with Peter Serkin. I think you started working with him when you were probably 18, 19 years old at Juilliard. Do I have that right, or was that graduate school?
It was graduate, the last year of my undergrad and my master's, so something like 22 to 24 or something.
I'm curious because I'm I think of you and Peter Serkin of having a lot of similarities with very broad capabilities, but digging deeply into the new music scene. I'm curious about how things got started with you and him, and what the influences were, and I'm sure he must have changed some of your thinking.
Oh, absolutely. Um, he had uh, certain composers that he was strongly affiliated with and had long-term relationships with. Um, Wuorinen for one, Takamitsu, Nasan. Um, but the lessons themselves, what he was great at was uh, different ways of touching the piano. He was especially good actually with like early 20th century music. I remember playing Schoenberg for him, playing Schoenberg's Eleven for him, playing Debussy etudes for him. Pieces with a ton of different different kinds of articulation markings, and he just really could get such a huge variety. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
I saw the last time I saw him was at Tanglewood. He was doing the complete Schoenberg,
Uh-huh.
which he was reading. And actually, it was very funny. I think I told you um, his page turner was very, very short and was wearing black, and he was wearing a white jacket. And when they walked on stage, well, he had that very slow way of walking on stage. I kind of expected a comedy routine rather than the complete works of Schoenberg.
Yeah.
So, yeah, speaking of that concert, I heard Paulini do the complete works in
Uh-huh.
Vienna back in 1974, and the room was packed. All of the professors were there and the students, and the audience just, went wild after each piece, and then he was forced to repeat almost the entire program after that. Whereas with with Peter, when he finished, the audience could not leave fast enough, and and I'm thinking, I guess this is the difference between the U.S. and 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 Vienna, Austria.
Well, maybe times have changed things also. I don't know how people would take that there now.
Yeah, this was it was when Kira was there at Tanglewood, so probably 1999
Mhm.
when that happened. Um, and but tell me more. I want to hear more about that and what roads he led you down um, in the early years, so to speak.
Um, he, my experience in the lessons, he was kind of aloof. That the lessons were always at his house. I would go, and I would try to sometimes engage him about a score that was on the piano or a picture that was on the wall. And he didn't really want to. He was cordial and everything friendly, but just didn't was very pure and focused on the task at hand. He certainly never he never invited me to a concert that he was giving. Or I mean, he never came to one of my concerts too. He was kind of um, otherworldly in that way or something.
Hmm. No, I got that feeling whenever I would see him perform.
Yeah.
Um,
The actually it's later that he was teaching at Bard the last couple of years of his life, and I would occasionally go up there and play for him, and that felt like I understood more and more about him, or I felt like I understood better what he was trying to get me to do the older I got, and the longer we.
so did Peter introduce you to Charles Wuorinen, and how did you get connected to Wuorinen?
No, Warren gave a talk at Juilliard, or there was just a seminar, performances of his music, and they asked me to play. This was probably in 2002 or three, um, and I played a piano piece of Warren's, and we met, Charles and I, and and then yeah, over the years I've played a lot of his music and became really, I just really believed in it. I really believe in it. I love it. Yeah.
So tell me more about how that developed with Charles Wuorinen, and what pieces you did, and what the settings were, and so forth.
Oh, um, a lot of the music with percussion, because I'm in a new music group called Thalia Ensemble, which is run by a percussionist who also, feels strongly about Warren's music. So we played there's a percussion duo for percussion and piano.
Oh, right.
There's a trio.
This is Zuber, right?
No,
No.
this is a young guy called Alex Lepowski.
Okay, sorry.
Although I played that duo with Greg also. Um, but anyway, a lot of the music, these pieces with percussion or the chamber music, I got to do a lot of. I mean, Warren has a lot of chamber music, very prolific composer of chamber music, and so those, and then several piano pieces. And after I sort of knew Charles a little better, I was interested in learning the music and going and playing for him. So I would do that occasionally, even if there wasn't a concert immediately pressing.
Hmm.
And then
So,
were various birthdays. I mean, at Barge Music, we put on a concert for his 70th birthday, and then for his 75th birthday, we did, and then for his 80th birthday too. I remember.
hmm. So he came really right out of Viennese school, and is that? Um, can you comment on that a little bit? I mean, he was a kind of a disciple of Schoenberg, and
Sure, he was, yes, a 12-tone composer, a very committed one. Um, his early music often sounds to me like it comes from the late Cyril Stravinsky, like Stravinsky orchestral variations or movements, the piece for piano
right.
orchestra. It has the same kind of intertwining lines, and also Warren in his 12 tone. I mean, this becomes more obvious later, maybe in his music, but he was a 12 tone composer, but also was not afraid at all of pitch centricity and kind of embraced it. Pieces starting very obviously and ending very obviously on the same pitch, or being centered around a particular note. He kind of combined those things. I mean, there's a line in his bio that I always think of, something about how he, combined the Schoenbergian pitch manipulation with the rhythmic intensity of Stravinsky. There's a lot of kind of motoric rhythmic music from Wuorinen, so there's that blend too. I mean, in a way, sort of fusion of Schoenberg and Stravinsky's legacies.
That's interesting because certainly Schoenberg and Stravinsky didn't want to synthesize or synchronize themselves.
Sure.
Um, it was funny because my old teacher Veronica Jochum back in the late 70s was saying that Schoenberg, to her and Brendel and people like this, was no longer seeming atonal because they'd memorized it all.
Right.
And I would imagine that, when it first came out, and still, if you're not ready for it, it it is hard to find to grab onto the tonality. But I would imagine Wuorinen is way beyond that and um, not concerned about being elusive in terms of tonality.
Right. No, there are pieces that start very aggressively with triads, or end with triads. I mean, not shying away from that as maybe Schoenberg felt he had to.
Well, he was incredibly prolific, Wuorinen. It's funny because I think of him as being in the modernist mode, but really he was, which could separate him from the mainstream of the Beethoven's Fifth necessity of gathering large masses to hear symphonies. But man, that guy was productive for decades and decades, like 6 decades.
Well, part of it, he believed strongly in having a language and a method. I mean, in fact, he wrote a book about his method, this book called Simple Composition, that sort of goes through and tells you what you should do to compose in a sort of rigorous way. I think that's unusual maybe among 20th century composers who say, well, you have to wait for inspiration, or he was very into, like, I have this method, I figured it out. Everyone should do this. I do this, and that allowed him to work swiftly.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to bring up the concert that you did. We had a series called Piano in the White House. Uh, and you were part of that series, and your job was to play music by the 5 recipients of the some kind of Medal of the Arts that was awarded by the President, National Medal of I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, the composers were Carter, Virgil Thompson, Aaron Copland. Who else was on that? There were 2 other composers. And you did. Pardon?
Roger Sessions.
Was it Sessions? We can look it up. But in any case, we did that. You did that concert, and I remember that you seemed to you played very complex music, and for a crowd that really had very little knowledge of the music, if any, and they loved it. So we're going to say that's good, and congratulations on that. And I'm wondering, maybe you could talk about how you developed an affinity for that music, and because this was all modern, in the 80s especially, and they were awarded, I think, by Jimmy Carter and by Ronald Reagan. It was just in that time period in the late 80s, or late 70s, early 80s. But tell me, how did that happen that you are so connected to that music, and that and honestly, Stephen, it's so, to us normal people, it seems so easy for you to bring it off.
Well, well, when I was in school, I got very interested in Carter's music. I heard it. I remember the Juilliard Quartet uh, was playing was playing the quartets at the time. There was some kind of anniversary, and I remember listening and being very, very interested in it. And then there was a sort of, um, I don't know if you'd call it a competition, but the new music group at school decided to play Carter double concerto, and I really practiced that really hard. I played the piano part, and I was really excited to play it. I was so drawn to it. I guess some I mean, in my normal work life I play a lot of contemporary music, and I it's just experiential for me. Some things seem kind of two-dimensional and flat and not so interesting, but then I feel that Carter or Babbitt, I think these are great masters where I feel a richness and interest in the music. Um, it keeps giving back to me as I practice it. I also feel, I mean, in Babbitt in particular, that's what makes me feel the most like playing Mozart or Haydn. That there's an articulation over a long span of time. I mean that the notes can have a local significance, they can have long range significance. That the time is structured meaningfully. I think that in some late 20th century music, early 21st century music, even someone like Ligeti, let's say, it's very impressive, but to me it's a little bit of a crude way of constructing a piece. That, for instance, one hand is in the black keys, one hand is in the white keys, and we just do that until the end of the piece. There isn't articulation inside the structure. The piece, let's say, travels up the keyboard, and when the piece gets to the top of the piano, it's over. There aren't kind of phrases and internal divisions inside. What I like about Babbitt is that there are phrases that add up to paragraphs that make a large, to me, meaningful structure. The sense of rich, deep structure at many levels.
Got it. Steve, let's go on to, I want to speak for a couple of minutes about Fred Lerdahl and basically ask you, um, when you're playing Fred's music, he's a pretty brainy guy, if I may say that. To me, he's one of those big intellectuals in the music world, and he has certain systems and so forth. And I'm wondering, the first thing that comes to my mind is because I know you prepare things quickly, how deeply you delve into his theoretical concepts when you're actually preparing the piece for performance on Sunday.
Not although I read the books and so on early on when I got interested in his music, and I maybe have it in the back of my head somewhere. But I think his big thing has been, making the music logical and intelligible and not cognitively opaque, so that when you're preparing it, it is hopefully pretty clear what derives from what and what is attached to what, which is what I'm always trying to figure out in whatever music I'm playing. What does this come from, and what is it attached to coming up?
I see. And actually, his music is quite beautiful, I think, and quite accessible. I try to link the two because there is this world out there. What was the guy's name at Yale? I met him a long time ago. Concepts of atonal music. Do you remember who that was?
No.
He was the head of the theory department at Yale sometime back. Very quite famous guy. But in his book on atonal harmony, I just my eyes start to spin around because I want to understand what he's thinking, and I think Fred is capable of that as well. But somehow, but on the other hand, he brings us very accessible music. Did you have anything to say about that in particular?
About his music?
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, just that I love it. I've always loved it, and I appreciate the rigor, you know, but I also appreciate the beauty, and I'm happy I've gotten to play quite a lot of pieces. It always feels nice. It feels like there's a deep substance there. He wrote a piece for me, actually, a piece for piano, and it's like a little piano concertino, you know, piano and chamber orchestra.
Oh, cool. Is that recorded somewhere or how?
No, we played it just once, and we're trying to get funding to record it. It was a Thalia thing. We played it. This is a He had a 75th birthday concert. We played it at.
I see. Um, there's another question I wanted to get into, if I can remember what it was while we were talking about that. But in the meantime, what's next? What's coming up over the next year?
What is coming up? I play, you know, a lot with the Philharmonic, orchestral piano, celeste, this kind of thing, and so there's some of that in the fall. Um, a group I'm in, Talea, is going to a festival in Germany, a famous festival, Donaueschingen, that's been going on for I don't know, you know, 80 years or something, and so that'll be nice. And in the meantime, I have just been recording myself a lot, recording um, recording solo pieces, but also recording, you know, song accompaniments for people that are asking for them here at home. Um, and also, I mean, I think I mentioned this. My girlfriend started a website where people can write in and request pop songs, and so that's gotten actually a lot of attention, which has been great. She's a violist, and so we've been really recording pop songs all day.
Who knew?
It's a whole new world for me, but it's been entertaining, and people, as you know, we were on Canadian TV a couple of nights ago. We're huge.
Wow, you're becoming a star. So you've moved on from Anton Webern to Louis Louis. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, people have asked for a very wide range of things, from, I mean, standards to Elton John, you know, Billy Joel, the Beastie Boys, Hindemith, you name it. You know, we take all requests.
Well, it's amazing what's going on right now in this time where there are no concert halls.
Yeah,
Um, everybody is playing all day long on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube.
right.
Sometimes it seems like the more famous the artist, the more likely it is to be completely free. And,
Well, they,
and the struggling artists are asking for PayPal contributions.
right.
So, but that's how it is. It's pretty cool in some ways. Um, and there was one other question that I had. Oh yeah, with the Phil, um, that's been going on for quite a while. And you've been playing piano parts and celeste parts over the last several years.
Yeah. 2008, 2000.
Yeah. So also in the future, well, you have your recordings where you're becoming a rock star. Now that Prince is gone, we have Steve Beck
Right.
and another Beck, the real Beck, Steve Beck, and and you have the Phil coming up, Talia, and you're working with the Knights as well. I presume that uh, in a positive light that continues into the future.
Yes. Um, I can't remember next year, but that's a wonderful, robust group. You know, we've played at Dumbarton Oaks several times.
Sure. Now, is there, just quickly to wrap it up, with both of these groups, with Talia and with the Knights, do they have they're working with new composers, and they both have eclectic repertoire. How would you compare the two of them?
Well, Talia is more of a what I think of as a traditional new music group. that Thalia connects with composers, often academics. You know, we do school residencies at universities, but the aesthetic of Thalia is broadly, I would say, pretty European. I mean, playing sort of, you know, Lachenmann or Lachenmann's descendants, or sort of, you know, it's not a lot of American music. I know we've played Wuorinen, but generally it's a very European focused group. I mean, the director lives in Vienna for part of the time. You know, splits his time between Vienna and New York. So there's this European focus. Whereas the Knights, the new music part of it has been this sort of more friendly, you know, populist new music, more kind of alt classical, as they say. You know, this more recent, you know, diatonic a lot.
So, if I can interrupt, are the audiences different for these two groups?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm probably skewed from living in New York, but you know, there are new music groups that play new music, and that's what they do. Those are the funding sources. That's a separate arm, really. Whereas the Knights is more of a mainstream, you know, mainstream organization. So the new music the Knights do is not. That is, Thalia would never play a piece by Beethoven, you know, whereas the Knights, it's very frequent to play old music and then new music, but not, you know, not rigorously. I don't mean to make this sound negative. You know, they play new music that's accessible. Yeah,
probably for a broader audience.
Yes, that's a good way of saying it. It's
right.
appealing to a wider group.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Steve. This has been fun, and look forward to continuing this conversation over the next year, as we already have over the last 20 years.
Right. Thanks, Burnett. We should know how we met. Well, you can add that later.
Yeah, we met. Well, I first heard you play at Suzanne Guy's house, the late Suzanne Guy's house, when you were probably 14 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And then I dragged you into an interview with, what was the guy's name that wrote the book, the biography of Gottschalk,
right,
called Bambula.
Right.
And since I didn't want to have to play the music, you were doing the orchestral piece.
What's that?
What did you play? You played the toccata, right?
No, the Grand Tarantelle.
The Grand Tarantelle. So I dragged you into wow.
With the Grand Tarantelle for piano and orchestra.
Yeah, so you came in and played segments of that for that.
Right.
Yeah, long ago, ancient history. All right, thanks, Steve, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Burnett.
See you later.